There's this story I knew growing up. For some reason, when I picture it in my head, all the characters are penguins. I think I had a book of it where they were all penguins. The fact that they're penguins has no impact on the story. Anyway, the story is called The Emperor's New Clothes. I might be confusing that with the movie with
The poison for Cusco. The poison chosen specially to kill Cusco. Cusco's poison.
but I'm pretty sure that's what it's called. In the story, these two special tailors come to this kingdom or capital city or something. They offer to make a special set of clothes for the emperor. They explain that they are magical clothes and that only his most worthy citizens will be able to see them or something. So they work all day and night for like a week to produce this set of clothes and present them to the emperor. And he can't fucking see them. So he panics and says, "Oh wow, yeah, they're so beautiful." And all his court agrees, but they can't see them either. They're all just lying because they think everyone else can see them and they don't want to out themselves as unworthy. So the tailor suggests that the emperor go on a parade through town to show off his new clothes, and the king agrees because he assumes everyone else will see the new clothes. So he rides through town in his new clothes that he can't see. The thing is, not only can he not see them, not only can his court not see them, the whole town can't see them. No one can see them because there are no new clothes. Cut back to the tailors and they are just pretending to make clothes on empty looms. So the emperor just flashed his ding dong to his entire kingdom because he and everyone else were too afraid to speak up when they were experiencing something different than what they thought everyone else was. I think Half-Life Alyx is overrated. That might be a hot take. I repeatedly see articles and videos online praising Half-Life Alyx as the VR game, the only good VR game, what VR gaming is supposed to be. Now, if you're familiar with me, you probably know that I am a huge advocate of slapping a microwave to my eyeballs as a method of playing video games. I'd even go so far as to say it's my favorite method of playing games. So, Half-Life Alyx should be right up my alley, you'd think. Well then, why do I not like it? I do want to clarify, I'm not a Half-Life fan even per se, but I didn't play Half-Life 2 until it was on the orange box, and by that time I'd already played Halo 3, so I wasn't really there when it came out to experience it for what it was. And my experience with the game can be summed up as, "Oh no, Gordon, the Combiner here, better run away on the roof," and then, "Oh no, Gordon, the Combiner here, better run away on the jet ski," and then, "Oh no, Gordon, the Combiner here, better run away on this dune buggy," and then I quit. I just didn't care. The game lost my interest, which was one of the first times I remembering that kind of thing happening. So when HLA came around, I was super suspicious as I felt like the franchise had let me down and I had kind of written it off. I also didn't have an index, I had a Vive, so I didn't have the hand tracking gimmick that came with the index controllers, a gimmick of which Alyx was very keen on showing off as a key feature. Alyx was made to push the index in the way Halo was made to push the Xbox. I put off playing the game for maybe a year or so because I didn't want to buy an index, so I just kind of wrote it off. But now, having played the entire game with Vive wands and more recently Quest 3 controllers, I can confidently say it made zero difference in terms of gameplay or even immersion. If you own a Vive or Quest or whatever headset, don't let that deter you from trying it. The game still works. Anyway, I'm sure you're wondering right now what issues I have with the game, so let's lay them out. I've narrowed this down to 5 major gripes that kind of kill this game as a whole for me. Now, this one is kind of minor, I admit. I've spent a decent amount of time around firearms. I've even built a few. I'm by no means an expert, but I'm competent enough to know how to handle them properly and put holes in paper. Now, proper weapons handling in the media, when it's appropriate, is a huge pet peeve of mine. I actually love that about Supernatural. They did their homework with how to hold a pistol. Now, good old Sam and Dean were raised in a life of violence, trained on firearms from a very early age. Hell, they've basically been at war their whole lives. It makes sense that they know what a proper two-handed grip on a pistol is. Now cut to Alyx Vance, who has also grown up in a life of violence, fighting the Combine, pretty much been at war her entire life. So what the hell is this 1980s cup and saucer ass grip she's using? I swear, this pissed me off the entire playthrough. Alyx should know how to hold a firearm, and even if she doesn't, I'm her here, and I know how to hold one correctly. So game, just let me hold it correctly. It really bothers me. Gripe number 2 is how Half-Life Alyx chooses to handle locomotion. Now, most movement here is pretty traditional. You either move in your play space, using your legs with the steps and the knees bendings, etc., or you use your joystick to kind of slide around the game world, or you can teleport, but that's really immersive breaking and not particularly fun. This is all pretty typical for VR games. I have no complaints about this. Where it kind of falls apart is when you have to do anything other than walk or run, even though you don't really run too. The movement speed in this game is pretty slow. If you have to climb through a hole or jump or anything like that, you're treated with a prompt and you hold the button. You black out for a moment and then just appear where they wanted you to. Not only are mechanics like climbing, jumping, sliding, swinging, flying, things like that super easy to implement within VR, but they can be so engaging, there are entire games built around them. H3VR, which is in my opinion one of, if not the best VR shooter, has implemented several traversal methods in recent years, including things like climbing axes, grappling hooks, grappling guns, a grip launcher, and even handheld helicopter rotors, making things like climbing a rock face to get in a better position to snipe a hot dog an engaging and rewarding experience. We'll come back to H3VR several times throughout the video because it does a lot of things just plain better than Half-Life Alyx. So when a game decides to trade me hopping a fence with what's essentially a loading screen, it completely takes me out of the experience. Not something I'd expect from the quote only AAA VR game. Gripe number 3 is somewhat related to 1, and that's the lack of two-handed weapons. I read somewhere that Valve didn't want to add two-handed weapons because, quote, you have a free hand to interact with items. I've also seen arguments online saying two-handed weapons just don't work well in VR. In my opinion, these are both terrible excuses. A two-handed weapon mechanic would have made the game much more fun, especially when it comes to the shotgun, and would have been able to add a wider variety of weapons. Leaving them out for the reasons stated before is just a bad way to go, in my opinion. Almost every VR shooter has managed to do two-handed weapons in a way that is intuitive, so why can't Valve? That's rhetorical. Don't answer that. It's a video. I can't hear you anyway. Gripe 4 has less to do with the weapons themselves and more to do with the combat. See, Halo 2 introduced a few new enemies to the game sandbox, most notably the Brutes. Brutes are large, bipedal, ape-like aliens with a very savage tribe-like society. In Halo 2, the Brutes were mostly bullet sponges. They had no weak spots and didn't really react to being shot at. You just kind of hold the trigger until they died. In Halo 3, when they took more of a center stage role as the main baddies, they were reworked so that as you shoot them, pieces of armor would fall off, eventually exposing their head where a single shot could down them. The Combine and Alyx are the Halo 2 Brutes. They hardly react to being shot at, take way too much ammo, which is limited enough as it is, and just aren't interesting to fight, which is odd because the head crabs in the beginning are much more fun to fight, as are the bugs towards the end with the weak spots on their limbs. When I think Half-Life, I think Combine, and the Combine here suck. When I see them, I don't feel fear or excitement, I just feel upset that I have to fight through these again. Gripe number 5 also comes from the weapons. I mean, it's a shooter, so a lot of gameplay comes from the weapons. Well, actually, now that I think about it, it's less about the weapons and more about, well, let me put it this way. I love Elden Ring. It's been my game of the year every year since it came out. And in my off time, I play it quite often. A huge part of the game is finding upgrade materials for your weapon, eventually maxing it out to either plus 25 or plus 10, depending on the weapon type. When you do, the blacksmith even comments that it's now ready to kill a god. Now, imagine as you approach the final boss, the game decides to just take your weapons away that you've been upgrading for the last few dozen hours and tell you to fight the boss with some rocks that are on the floor in the arena. That's pretty much what Alyx does. The upgrade materials are pretty hard to find. I spent most of my playthrough looking through every nook and cranny trying to find these stupid little hockey pucks so I could upgrade my 1911. And the upgrade stations are few and far in between. I bonded with my pistol's build. I felt attached to it. And as you begin the final section of the game, you're stripped of your equipment and instead have to utilize energy orbs found on the walls by throwing them. them. You know what action doesn't really translate well to VR? Throwing. Anyway, this was a crazy, dumb design choice in my opinion, and it makes me feel like upgrading weapons is kind of pointless in the long run. Remember how we all watched Game of Thrones, but then the final season came out and it ruined the whole series and we never went back to watch any of it ever again?
Best season ever!
That's the ending of Half-Life Alyx for me. So that's my rant. All these faults, to me at least, add up to make Alyx not a good game with some flaws, but a mid-game with some good spots. And the good spots do really shine. The gravity gloves are so good, H3VR essentially cloned the system. The section where you have to sneak around the factory to avoid a blind monster was genuinely one of the best times I've ever had in gaming, full stop. The upgrades you can do to the pistol are really cool, especially the hopper, and the shotgun's animations are pretty incredible. The hacking puzzles also work tremendously in VR. The writing is, well, better than anything Bethesda has put out.
Nobody's dick's that long. Not even Long Dick Johnson, and he had a fucking long dick. Thus the name.
So there's that. I know this was a bit of a departure from my other videos, but don't worry, those are still coming. And if you enjoyed this little side quest, let me know in the comments. Also, here's your obligatory subscribe call to action. So hit that button if you haven't already. To wrap things up, other than making this video, I haven't gone back to Alyx in the years since I beat it. I wish I could see the Emperor's new clothes like the rest of you, but all I get is a face full of penguin cock. Oh, I get it. He was an Emperor penguin.